Hey guys, it's me, Seren, back with another video. So before I get into this video, I want to talk really briefly about my shirt, the shirt that I have on. I actually got the shirt in Leavenworth, Kansas, and it says Buffalo Soldiers, 9th and 10th Horse Cavalry. I want to read it like exactly what the way that it says. So in Leavenworth, Kansas, they actually have the Buffalo Soldier Monument, and they have the Richard Allen Cultural Center. These are monuments and museums that are dedicated to Black American culture in the West. And the 9th and 10th Cavalry was actually, again, the Buffalo Soldiers, which I'm sure we've kind of all heard of, which is the Black American Armed Forces in the West. So I did a lot of filming while I was there. I picked up this shirt. I picked up a couple of other shirts there. They also have a bust and a section that's dedicated to Cathay Williams, who I did a Hidden Figures video on. Cathay Williams was the first woman and the first Black American woman, but first woman overall to enlist in the Army. If you guys haven't seen that video, obviously there will be a link in the description box, but I bought this shirt while I was there. I love polos, and I thought the shirt was like super cool, so I just wanted to tell you guys a little bit about this shirt honoring the Buffalo Soldiers, 9th and 10th Cavalry. So look forward for more information on them once we start getting more into season 2 of the Black Americans. But this video is going to be on the passing of Toni Morrison. So you guys know Toni Morrison. The reason why this video is so late is because I've been just really sort of grappling and coming to terms with Toni Morrison's passing. You guys know Toni was like my mentor in my head. Like Toni, Dr. Joy DeGruy, who created the concept of post-traumatic slave syndrome, Bell Hooks, Audre Lorde, Angela Davis, who Toni Morrison actually like brought out Angela Davis. Her autobiography was developed and published by Toni Morrison at Random House. But like you guys know, like Toni Morrison, I talked about her in my Black Women That Shaped Me video, and a bunch of the other women that I just named. It was like Toni Morrison and Dr. Joy DeGruy are like my parents. Toni Morrison's books, I read a lot of her novels. I grew up reading them because my grandmother had them. My grandmother's a reader, and she always just had so many books in the house, and even still to this day, she does. So I grew up reading her books, and then when I got older, I got into her lectures, and, you know, because they have like so many of her lectures on YouTube now. I got into her lectures and her interviews, and, you know, just she was so profound, and her work, not just her fiction work, but like her thoughts and like just everything, just like it touched me, you know, like it really reached me. And I always, you know, I have a video called literally Do Your Work, which is like based around Toni Morrison. Again, all these videos, I'll include links in the description box. Do Your Work, which is one of my early videos, one of my first ones. It's from like 2014 or 2015. So Do Your Work is a video where I talked about a lecture that Toni Morrison gave in Portland in 1975 at Portland State, where she literally says, you know, like, racism is not Black people's problem. That shit is white people's problem. That's something that they have to fucking deal with. Like, there's a very famous quote of hers that's been going around this week since she passed, which is like, if you can only be tall when somebody else is on your knees, like, you have a very serious problem. White people have a very serious problem, and they need to start thinking about what they're going to do about it. At her lecture that she gave in Portland, she said, you know, you don't have to dedicate all your life and all your energy and all of your emotions and all of your fucking creative genius and all of everything that you have going for you, right, to fucking educating white people or proving to them something. You don't have to prove nothing to them. Oh, that you have a culture. Oh, that you have a language. Oh, that you have this. Oh, that you have that. You don't have to prove that to them, right? She's like, they live in a motherfucking prison of their own creation. They live in their own world. You don't have to. She like resisted the white gaze, right? Toni Morrison said, like, all you have to do is do your work. Whatever your work is going to be, whatever you're going to dedicate your life to, right, in terms of being she was talking like sort of specifically for like Black creatives, and but not even just Black creatives, like being a Black person, being a Black American, being a Black creative, being someone that's fighting for the liberation of Black bodies. If that's what you're doing, like all you have to do is like figure out what your work is going to be and do it. And all that even sounds like very serious. Like even if your work is just going to be like, I'm going to wake up every day with a smile on my face and I'm going to be happy and I'm not going to let these fucking crackers get me down type shit. You know, like whatever your work is going to be, decide what it's going to be and do it. Dedicate your life to it. Stop taking emotional time and energy out to like deal with people that are committed to hating you, that are committed to misunderstanding you, that are committed to feeling like you are beneath them. And like so many tenets of like her methodology, I don't even know how to like even describe it. Like what, like everything this woman says is just like brilliant. So many tenets of like the things that she said, I just apply in my own day-to-day life, to my own sort of praxis, to my own artistic practice, my writing, my videos, you know, of just like, I don't have to fucking explain myself to anybody. I don't have to exist inside of the white gaze. I don't have to give a fuck what white people think. I don't have to care about these white awards. I don't have to care about no white validation. And even like taking it a step further for me personally, it's like, I don't have to do that with anyone. No one. I don't have to prove anything to anybody. I don't have to care what anybody thinks. The only thing that I have to do, again, is create and work for the liberation of Black bodies, right? And Black Americans specifically, descendants of American chattel slavery, right? Hold on to our culture, archive our culture, you know, use my platform to speak, use my platform to allow other Black Americans to have a voice, focus on Black-owned businesses. And I don't have to explain nothing to anybody else. I don't have to care. You don't like it? That's fine. Great. I don't have to expend any energy away from what I'm doing to make you feel comfortable. Like, I already know who I am. And it's wild because I saw her documentary. A documentary just came out last month, The Pieces I Am, and I saw it when I was in Chicago. I had to go see it because you guys know, like, I love Toni Morrison, and it was such a great documentary. I will be writing a review of it. I guess I could talk about it a little bit here. I wasn't going to do Good, the Bad, the Ugly format of this documentary anyway, but I'm definitely not going to do it now. But, like, the documentary was basically, it was sort of like, it was more so, in my opinion, like an autobiography on film type than like a documentary. Because, like, the majority of it was, like, Toni Morrison speaking herself on her life. Like, recalling events, recalling what happened. And of course, there's also interviews and clips from like friends and family members and coworkers and people who knew her. The poet Sonia Sanchez is in it, which was like really cool. She's like really zany and brilliant and artistic, and I love her. She's like, I want to be like her when I'm like older. And it's also intercut with like archival footage and, you know, photographs and books and notes and, you know, all these types of things to sort of create this, just again, like, I think of it as like a tapestry, you know, like a tapestry of her life. But the majority of it is what was so hard. Toni speaking on herself and just being like, you know, yeah, I went into publishing. It just kind of happened, you know. I saw this ad in the back of Random House, and so I just like applied, and I was living in Jersey. I went to the interview. Oh, I got it, you know? And then she like worked her way up to being a senior editor at Random House. She was the only Black woman in that position. And she was just like, everything is so boring. Like, I thought these white men were just so uninteresting, and these white authors that they were bringing out was just like so uninteresting, and like nothing that they wanted to say. Like, I didn't I wasn't feeling any of their stories. So I decided I was going to develop Black artists, and I was going to, you know, like Muhammad Ali. She was like, you know, I met Muhammad Ali, and I said, like, you have to write a book. You have to write an autobiography. You have to talk about, like, not just your boxing career, but, like, your civil rights work, your activism work, you know, your anti-war stance, and, you know, your anti-racist stance, you know, and she did the same thing with Angela Davis, who was very young when she wrote her autobiography, and, you know, said, I don't think I can do this. Like, I'm not almost on some, like, I'm not a writer. I'm not anybody. I'm not prepared, you know. Toni Morrison really, she like worked her way up, and then she brought these other, Black American, and again, not just writers, not just artists, but even people that thought they couldn't write, that thought they weren't artists, that thought they couldn't create, She brought them under her wing. She mentored them. Like, she mentored so many artists and writers over the years. And this is just like in addition, and that's just like her publishing work, right? So that's like in addition to her novels, which she didn't even start writing until she already had this like amazing like career in publishing and have brought out all of this like Black literature. When she was 39, it wasn't until she was like 39, 40 that her first book, The Bluest Eye, even came out. And she didn't even submit The Bluest Eye to Random House because she herself, she says this in the documentary, that she just was like, I don't even know if I'm a writer. Like, I'm an editor, like I have a couple of English degrees. I was a teacher. Like, she taught English at Howard. She went to school in Howard University, and then she went to Cornell. And then she became a teacher, and then she became a publisher, and she was an editor. And then she just kind of like wrote a book in her spare time, right? Because like, who does that? Toni Morrison. She got married, she got divorced, she had like 2 sons. One of her sons went on to become like a fucking rocket scientist because like, who writes books in their spare time while being a single mother of 2 sons and goes on to like raise a rocket scientist and write The Bluest Eye and write Beloved and give lectures about how you don't have to give a fuck about what these white people think. Like, Toni Morrison is just like, she's like my idol. Like, she was really like my idol. And it's like, it's surreal. It's surreal to think that she's just no longer in this world. She was elderly, and so, it's not super surprising, but it's just like, oh, what is a world without Toni Morrison? What is a world without Toni Morrison? And it's just, she was everything to me, you guys. Like, she was everything to me. So I was saying, I feel like I could just like ramble on and on. So I was saying that The Bluest Eye was published when Toni Morrison was like 39 going on 40, which I also find to be really, I'm going to use the word inspiring, even though that's not exactly the right word, but I feel like we do live in a youth-obsessed culture, and so we hear all these stories and all these tales of like, 20, maybe not 20 under 20, but like 30 under 30 lists and like 40 under 40 lists. And we live in this society that has this like chokehold on like youth as, you have to like go, and you have to like get all these things done by the time you're a certain age or else you're a failure. And even though, Toni Morrison was an editor, she was a publisher, so she did already have, a really sort of luminous career in publishing, and not just, luminous in the sense of like that it was a good career or a lucrative job or anything like that, but I mean in terms of like her working with, other Black literary artists and like bringing them out and, making sure that there was a space for them. But she sort of switched gears at almost 40 and became a writer, and started writing fiction and wrote 5 books. And her first 5 books she wrote while she was still working her full-time job. She was literally getting up at like 4 o'clock in the morning to write. So I want to say about that a little bit is that I want that to be like an inspiration for people that feel like, maybe it's too late or you're not on the right path or you're not on the right track or you can't start over. Like, you can always start over. You can always, again, like she even got her job at Random House, like she had divorced, her and her husband had got divorced, and she had moved literally like in with her sister, and she was like living with her sister. She saw the ad in the back of the newspaper for the job. She applied for the job. They called her for an interview. She left her 2 sons with her sister. She drove her father's car, like a Buick or something, like into New York because they were living in New Jersey, and like got the job, right? And she was even still living at home when she first started. We have all these ideas of people and of our heroes, because she's the hero of mine, as again, being these sort of like larger than life, omnipresent figures. And then, I watched this documentary and I hear and I see Toni Morrison like saying in her own words, like, yeah, I don't know what I was going to do. Like, she says, like, I got my master's, I was teaching at Howard, but she was like, I plateaued. I could only get to like so far with my teaching because I didn't have a PhD, and they wanted me to have a PhD. I didn't have one. I wasn't going back to get one. I had 2 small sons. I was divorced. I was raising my sons alone. Like, so I didn't know what I was going to do. I just so happened to see this advertisement. I applied for it, left my kids with my sister, drove my father's car there, like, and then she was commuting. After she got the job, she was commuting, right? Like, she was living in Jersey, she was raising her son, she was going to work, and then she was still teaching like a few classes here and there. She was teaching a creative writing class, and she did like a writing prompt that was about a little black girl that like wanted to have blue eyes, and then that became The Bluest Eye. She developed that into The Bluest Eye, and then she wrote again like just several more books in the same way. All these books that centered especially Black American women, Black American culture, the Black American experience. You know, they talk in the documentary about how her family was from Alabama. They left Alabama during the Great Migration after a lynching happened in her town, right? And they moved to Ohio. She was born in Ohio. She was raised in a very small town called Lorain, Ohio. And then she showed an aptitude for English, so she ended up leaving Ohio and attending Howard for undergrad, and then Cornell. And even in Howard, she talks about how she wanted to, for her final thesis, how she wanted to do this piece that was like a retelling of Shakespeare through like this Black American perspective and with all Black characters. And she talks about how her professors were like so scandalized, like, no, you can't do that, you know, like you can't, disturb Shakespeare, the literary canon, with this Black nonsense, right? And she was just like, well, I'm Black and I have a story to tell, and I don't care about motherfucking Shakespeare, right? And Toni Morrison was so irreverent. Like, she just didn't fucking care about anything. All this shit that everybody was holding so near and dear, this fucking ivory tower shit, she did not care. She was like, I don't fucking care about no fucking Shakespeare. Like, I don't care about your white stories. I'm Black. Like, I'm a Black American. I came from a certain place, right? My family even ended up in Ohio for certain reasons. I want to explore that. I want to talk about that. I don't care about none of the rest of the stuff that y'all are talking about. And everybody acted like she was so radical, and she was so controversial, and she was so wild, and she was so out of the box. And she's writing these novels, and the novels were slow to take off. Like, The Bluest Eye didn't do well at first, right? People were saying like that the novels are too much. They're just like, they're brutal and they're graphic. And why is every novel about race? Why is everything about racism? And everyone said like, Toni Morrison's an amazing writer. They were like, you're a brilliant writer. There's no denying her like writing skill, like her technical writing ability, or her ability to like create these worlds and create these characters and draw you in and use this sort of wit and this humor and this like this dialogue, you know. But they were like, but when are you going to write about real people, aka white people? When are you going to write about real stories, aka white stories? When are you going to stop wasting your talent with this fucking Black shit? And she was just like, fuck y'all. I do what I want, you know. And it wasn't until even Beloved, which she published in 1987 when she was 45, right, that it was sort of like, oh, like, okay, people sort of really started to like sit back and take notice. And even with Beloved, which got like critical, super critical acclaim, it stayed on like the bestseller list for like 25 weeks or something like that, she still didn't get nominated for any book awards. And there's like a whole section of the documentary that's about that as well, because 48 Black writers and artists and playwrights, they publicly protested. They wrote an open letter to the New York Times. It was published in the New York Times saying like, Toni Morrison is like a literary great. Like, as a publisher and an editor, she's great. She brought out so many Black artists and writers, including several people that like wrote in the letter. Maya Angelou wrote in the letter. You know, they're like, she already had this like illustrious editing career, and now she's writing these amazing books, right? Tar Baby and Sula, you know, she's writing these books that are sort of centering the Black American experience and talking about us and talking to us and writing for us, you know. And Toni Morrison also said several times, like, again, she said, I'm not interested in the white gaze. She's like, you know, I read these books by these so-called Black authors, and I find myself wondering, who are they writing for? Because they're giving all these addendums, and they're giving all these explanations. They're explaining what people are saying. They're explaining what people are talking about, what the shorthand is, what the slang is, what type of food they're eating, what type of clothes they have on, what the music is, what's happening in church. She's like, so obviously they're not writing for me. They're not writing for a Black audience, because I don't need these addendums. I don't need these explanations. You know, she's like, I read the quote-unquote great, Black authors, right? And I wonder, who are they writing for, right? She really kind of ushered in this contemporary era of Black artistry that did not have, she called it like a little white person on your shoulder, that didn't have a little white person on your shoulder like, no, you can't do that. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can't do this. You have to explain this. You have to explain that. You know, the invisible white audience, right? The white gaze. And her rejection of that, it even extended to like the mainstream awards sort of circuit and the white awards and the white validation. Because like even when the authors came out and they wrote the piece, when she talks about it in the documentary, she's very like flippant about it. Like, I really didn't care about that award. Like, you know, they wanted me to get the National Book Award or whatever. But, you know, it's kind of like Beloved is a story it's based on Margaret Garner, who I did do a Hidden Figures video on, who was an escaped slave. She ran away with her children. I want to say she crossed the frozen Ohio River to freedom, which I believe probably even made it even more, you know, tangible and serious for Toni Morrison, also being from Ohio. And Margaret Garner ended up eventually getting caught by her former master, and she killed one of her children. She attempted to kill all of them rather than have them be returned to slavery, and she only succeeded in killing one. And it actually ended up going to court because the question was, could she be tried for murder? Because as a slave, slaves were not considered human beings. We were not considered property. Obviously, we were considered chattel. So it's like, can you charge a thing with murder? They wanted to charge her with murder, but it's like, if you're charging her with murder, that means you're recognizing her humanity. American chattel slavery was really just like a motherfucking mindfuck. Like cognitive dissonance, Dr. Joy DeGruy, like cognitive dissonance is very real. Like white people knew, like they knew, they know we're human, they know we're people. Like, and again, this is getting into what Toni talks about. Like they know all this. I don't know. Explain. They're playing dumb. Like they know. They just have dissonance to separate themselves from the horrible things that they do, and that's their problem. That's not your problem as a black person. Off on a tangent. Let's get back. But she even talked about how during that time period, she found the whole conversation about the award to even be so uninteresting. Because it's kind of like, I wrote this story about a dead girl, you know, Beloved, that has come back to haunt her mother who killed her. And it's, you know, it's a story about love. It's a story about family, you know, black love and black family sort of in this shadow, under this blood shadow, right, of American chattel slavery. And we quibbling over some awards. Does the award really matter? Which I've talked about. You guys know, like, I'm not with the award shit either. It's sort of like, does the award matter? Does the award change the work? Does it change the actual words on the page? Does it magically make the novel better? No, right? It doesn't. It's going to be exactly the same book, except now it just has this recognition, this validation. And Toni Morrison was like, I don't need that, right? And then ironically, 2 months later, she won the Nobel Prize. 2 months later, she actually won the Pulitzer, and then she went on later to win the Nobel Prize. So I just found everything about this woman's life to just guide me, to inspire me. I know this video is so long, I'm like going, well, sure, compared to some of my old ones, y'all know I could get like 45 minutes to an hour, but I just found, so the documentary was wonderful. I'm sure it's still out, or at the very least, it's probably being re-released, or it's probably going to resurge since she did pass away. But I really enjoyed the documentary. It was just wonderful sort of seeing her talking about her life. And obviously knowing now that it's almost like a closing, right? Like it was the end of her life. She's looking back on her life. She's talking in her own words. It's not really being filtered through, again, sort of somebody else's perspective. And then kind of having the other interviews and the other clips. And I really enjoyed sort of getting this view of her and her life and her work and her artistry and just what she accomplished, you know? And again, she's my mentor in my head, my idol, my mom, my creative mom, because she really helped me. You know, today is August 9th. So today is actually the 5-year anniversary of the death of Mike Brown. And so we're coming up on the 5-year anniversary of this channel as well. Thank you to everyone that's been watching, longtime subscribers, new subscribers. Thank you to everyone. But like when Mike Brown first got killed, I was very angry. I was furious. Which is part of why I started my YouTube channel, why I started sort of writing my long form content on, you know, race and all that. And one of the first lectures that I came across was Toni Morrison's lecture at Portland State in 1975, and it just gave me so much clarity, you know, at a time where I was just like, am I on drugs? Like, everybody around me is acting like this shit is fine, and this shit is not fine. And everybody around me is acting like I need to sit down and have all these conversations. You know, I'm turning on the fucking TV and I'm watching the news and I see a panel, and the panel is like 2 white racists and 2 white moderates, and they having some debate about, did Mike Brown deserve to lay in the street? Like, what is happening, right? And I came across, and again, I was familiar with her work. I had always read her fiction, but I came across like that lecture in particular. On SoundCloud. It's still on SoundCloud to this day. You can listen to it in full. You can read transcripts. And I was just like, okay, all right. 1975, well before I was even born. My mom was even like a little kid still. Like, and it's just like, okay, all right. Okay, guidance. And then I like just dove into like more of her lectures, more of her interviews, reading more of her nonfiction work, reading the Black Book, which is a sort of an anthology that she created about Black culture, Black American culture, to be specific, descendants of American chattel slavery. And she was just a guide for me, like a guide, like a real guide. So I'm happy that she gets to rest. I'll never obviously forget. Like, I feel like I knew her. I feel like I want to say I'll never forget what she did for me, but it's like I never met her. She never sort of directly, you know, did anything for me, but I felt like she gave me the permission to center myself, right? To just really be unflinching and to like look inward and to just champion my people, like our stories, like our Black American stories, our Black American culture, our lives do not need to be proven valuable. We are valuable, right? And the system of white supremacy is just like over here, and like ethnocentrism is like over here, and like all this other stuff. And it's just like, even me getting into doing the Black Americans, Zora Neale Hurston, huge influence as well, anthropologist, folklorist, you know, just, and Toni Morrison, like a collector of stories, a collector of culture, you know, someone that championed us and understood us and the importance of us and wrote for us and spoke for us and loved us. And I just want to thank her. So thank you, Toni, even though I can't tell you. And on this day, I felt like it was fitting. Again, the 5-year anniversary of Mike Brown's death, to film this video. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. I know it was kind of all over the place, but, and I did, like I said, I wrote a review, so I will include a link to my written essay as well in the description box. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Food for thought as always. See you guys next time. Peace.